You can detect the pattern now. In the last volume, you took a head and shoulders, an RSI divergence, a trendline break, and you wrote each one as a rule a machine could find. You can put a detector on a chart and watch it mark every place the signal fires, with no human in the loop. That was the whole achievement of the previous volume. The eye turned into code. And now I am going to ask you the only question that detector cannot answer. So what? It found the pattern. Does the pattern make money? Put one chart on the screen. An anonymized large cap, 3 years of daily bars. Run your detector across it and let it drop a marker on every bar where the signal triggers. 40 markers scattered down the chart. Watch what your eye does next. It goes straight to the three markers that sit right before a clean run higher and it lights up. There, it works. Look at it. Now I cover those three and I show you the other 37. 11 of them sit right before the price rolls over and falls. 14 go almost nowhere. A little up, a little down, noise. The rest are somewhere in between. The detector did its job perfectly on all 40. It found the pattern every single time. What it never told you, what it cannot tell you, is whether being in those 40 trades, all of them, the winners and the losers together, left you richer or poorer. That is the question this volume exists to answer. Not, is the pattern there? The pattern is there. You proved that last volume. The question now is, does the pattern have an edge? And those are completely different questions. And the gap between them is where most traders lose money with a chart that looks to the eye like it obviously works. The tool that answers it is the backtest. So let me define it precisely, because the word gets thrown around loosely, and the loose version is worse than useless. A backtest is an experiment. You take a fully specified signal, every field a number, the way the last volume taught you, and you replay it across a fixed stretch of historical price, bar by bar, taking every trade the rule would have taken exactly as the rule says, with no exceptions and no second guessing. You record the result of each trade, and then you read what the pile of results tells you about whether the signal has an edge. Hear the words I leaned on. Every trade, exactly as the rule says, no exceptions. The instant you let yourself skip one signal because you know it would have failed, or take one extra because it obviously would have worked, you are not running a back test anymore. You are running your memory, and your memory is the unreliable instrument we have spent this entire program trying to bypass. A backtest is mechanical or it is nothing. Now, an experiment is only honest if you fix its conditions before you look at the answer. So before a single trade is counted, four things have to be nailed down. Put them on screen as four locked fields, because if any one of them is loose, the number you get out the other end is a number about nothing. Field 1, the universe. Which instruments does this run on? One anonymized large cap or a basket of 50? You decide before you start and you write it down because, and this is the trap, if you are allowed to choose the universe after you have seen the results, you will quietly keep the names where it worked and drop the names where it didn't, and call the leftover a strategy. The universe is fixed in advance. On screen, a fixed list of names, locked, dated. Field 2, the period. Over what stretch of history? 3 years, 10 years, which three, which 10? And it has to be long enough and varied enough to contain more than one kind of market. A signal tested only across one long bull run has told you how it behaves in exactly one weather. And the market has many. On screen, a date range with the trending stretches, the ranging stretches, and the violent stretches all marked inside it. You want all of them in the sample. Field 3, the exit. The detector finds the entry. It says nothing about how you get out, and the exit decides the result far more than the entry does. So the exit must be specified just as hard as the entry was. A fixed target and stop, a time-based exit after 10 bars, a trailing rule. You pick one, you write it as a number, and it governs every single trade identically. On screen, entry marker, stop line, target line, all drawn the moment the trade opens. Field 4, the accounting. What counts as the result of a trade and how is it added up? This is where we will spend a whole chapter later, because the naive version, pretend you bought exactly at the signal price and sold exactly at the target for free, is a fantasy that flatters every strategy ever built. For now, fix the principle. The result of each trade is recorded the same way by a rule in advance. On screen, a results table, one row per trade, the columns defined before the first row is filled. Universe, period, exit, accounting. 4 fields, locked before you look. That is the difference between an experiment and a story you tell yourself. So you run it. 40 trades replayed across 3 years, each one entered and exited by the rule. Each result written to a row. Now you are holding a table, 40 rows. And here is where the real skill begins, because a beginner looks at that table and asks the wrong question first. The wrong question is, how often did it win? It won 22 times out of 40, 55%, and the beginner relaxes. More than half, it works. Now watch me break that. I take the same 55% win rate and I show you two versions of it. In the first, the 22 winners each made 1 rupee and the 18 losers each lost 3. In the second, the winners made 3 and the losers lost 1. Identical win rate. One version bleeds money on every cycle, the other compounds. The win rate on its own told you nothing because it forgot to ask how big the wins were against how big the losses. So here is the one number that does the job. Expectancy. The average outcome of a single trade across the whole table, wins and losses blended together, weighted by how often each happens and how large each is. You take what the average winner makes, multiply it by how often you win. You take what the average loser costs, multiply it by how often you lose. Subtract the second from the first. What is left is what one trade is worth on average when you take all of them. Put it on screen as a single line at the bottom of the table. If that number is positive, the signal across this universe, this period, this exit, this accounting, put money in your pocket on average. If it is zero, the pattern was a coin flip dressed up as an edge. If it is negative, the chart that looked so convincing was quietly taking money from you, 40 trades at a time, and your eye never saw it because your eye only remembered the 3 that ran. Expectancy is the verdict line of the entire experiment. One number. Everything else in the report, and there is more. The equity curve, the drawdown, the streaks, and we will build all of it. Everything else exists to tell you how much to trust that one number. Because here is the honesty that separates this institution from the noise. A positive expectancy on a backtest is not a promise. It is not money in the future. It is one sentence and only one. Across this fixed history, run mechanically, this rule would have made money on average. Whether it keeps doing so is a separate question. The hardest question, and 3 more chapters of this volume exist to stop you from believing a number that was never real to begin with. Look at what the backtest actually buys you and be precise about it. Before the backtest, you had a detector and a feeling. The pattern is there and it looks like it works. After the backtest, you have a measurement. Across 40 trades and 3 years, here is exactly what it did, win and lose, and here is the average. The feeling cannot be argued with because it points at the three trades it remembers. The measurement can be argued with. You can ask it how it behaved in the ranging stretch. You can ask it what its worst run of losses was. You can ask it whether the edge survives once you pay the costs. A feeling is a story. A measurement is evidence. That is the whole upgrade. And now, the warning that this entire volume is built around, because I would rather you distrust a backtest than worship one. A backtest is the easiest thing in the world to fake, usually without meaning to. You can build a test that shows a beautiful rising equity curve and is, from end to end, a lie. Not because you cheated, but because you let the test see things the real trader never could have seen, or counted money the real trader never would have kept, or tuned the rule until it fit the very history you tested it on. Each of those is a specific named trap. Each one has flattened thousands of strategies that looked perfect on the screen and died the moment real money touched them. So here is the arc of the 5 chapters, and each one is a wall between you and a lie. This chapter built the experiment, the 4 locked fields, and expectancy as the verdict. Chapter 2 is about the clock. The single most common way a backtest lies to you is by letting the rule use information it could not have had at the time. A price from the future, an indicator that quietly redraws itself, a list of companies that conveniently excludes the ones that went to zero. We will install an honest clock that only ever lets the test see the past. Chapter 3 is about friction, the costs the naive test pretends do not exist, and how a strategy that looks profitable gross can be a loser net once the spread, the slippage, and the charges are paid on every one of those 40 trades. Chapter 4 is about the deepest trap of all, curve fitting, where you tune a rule so perfectly to past data that it describes the history flawlessly and predicts the future not at all, and the out of sample discipline that catches it. And chapter 5 takes one signal and runs it through every one of those walls, end to end, and reads the honest report out loud, and reaches a verdict even when the verdict is no edge here. So sit with where we start. You can find the pattern. What you cannot yet do is prove it pays, or just as important, prove that it doesn't, and walk away before it costs you. That proof is the skill this volume installs. A detector tells you the pattern is there. A backtest tells you whether being there was worth anything at all. Next, we build the honest clock, and I show you how a test sees the future without anyone noticing.